Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on what I called the grande finale in your SiOP process, being the Executive SiOP. Agenda for today, I want to give a short introduction of Solventure, who we are, what we do, review what I believe are two key elements of Exec SiOP, then talk about the supply chain metrics that matter, and some research we have been doing over the last 2 years and our findings on that, how to come to effective decision making in the Exec SiOP. And Nicolas will give a short demonstration of the supporting tool set, and we hope to provide ample time for questions and answers. So let me start by introducing Solventure. So as we mentioned here, we are experts in designing and implementing SiOP. We do that based on 4 pillars. So on the one hand, we have good knowledge of supply chain processes, so we can really help you to design your processes. We always do that in combination with tooling. The tooling we use is the Arqiva tooling. So we are the European channel partner of Arqiva in Europe. Together with Arqiva, we serve global customers. So ourselves, we are based in Belgium. Arqiva has offices in Belgium as well. They are headquartered in the US. They also have an office in India. So together with Arqiva, we are supporting global implementations. You can also see here that Arqiva has been listed both by Gartner, Supply Chain Insights. So it's certainly a key system of reference. So if you'd be looking for supply chain or S&OP software, it's one of the systems you should look at. So we have the process knowledge, we have good tooling, the Arqiva tooling. We combine it with analytics capabilities. If you talk about S&OP, take demand planning, you have something like statistical forecasting. Take inventory optimization, you have something like statistical inventory modeling. If you look at supply planning, you have things like the use of linear programming in defining an optimal plan. All of these are analytical capabilities that we have available within Solventure. And then we should not forget the people, because you can have the best process, the best tool, the most clever algorithms, but if the planner is not trusting the system, he will not use it. So you have to say good change management capabilities is also something we have, and that we have, let us say, incorporated in our implementation approach. The different blocks here, let's say, summarize our vision on SiOP. Customer product segmentation, briefly said, we see that a lot of companies still have the same service level for all customers and for all products, and that's clearly not optimal. No two customers are equal. They don't have the same size, they don't have the same profitability, they don't have the same willingness to innovate with you, nor are two products equal. No two products are equally, let's say, strategic. Some products reflect more the past, some products reflect the future, and your assets are better suited to produce some products and less suited to produce other products. So segmenting customers and products is really crucial as a starting point for an effective SiOP process. Customer product segmentation, for instance, has an impact on demand planning. If you know who are your A customers, those are the customers you want to do collaborative forecasting with. If you know which are the C products, and these are products for which you might reduce the service levels versus the A products where you want to have a higher service level. Also in supply planning, when you need to reserve capacities or when you need to cut demand, having a good segmentation is crucial in making intelligent decisions. Product management review as a second step. In general, we see that 7 out of 10 new product introductions are overstated, creating too much inventory. It also means that 3 out of 10 are understated, creating a service risk. So having a close follow-up with product managers or R&D on the launch of new products is essential in having an effective, let's say, supply chain. At the same time, we see that we are very good at introducing new products, but we are very bad at taking old products out. So what type of criteria do I use to get to take old products out? All of this is part of the product management review where we assist our customers. And I think the next steps are more common. So demand planning, inventory optimization, supply planning. On each of those blocks we already had webinars. We also have vision papers, so please check our Solventure SlideShare page if you want to know more about that. The topic for today is Executive SiOP. In previous introductions I always said that it's clear that it's the CEO or the BU president who should be in the driving seat of the S&OP process. And we see that a lot of companies struggle with that. So one of the key questions we will try to tackle with you today is how do I get the CEO in the driving seat of that Executive SiOP? We will talk more about that in next slide, so we'll not continue on that topic here. What might still be relevant here is that you see some crucial drivers in driving the SiOP process is translating volumes to value. So for sure the execs will be interested in the euros or the dollars, so translating the volumes to values is essential. Aggregation, disaggregation. You want to be able to steer the business or report at least on an aggregated level, but the devil is always in the details. So a plan in the end is for a specific product and it needs to be delivered to a specific customer. So powerful aggregation, disaggregation is needed to, on the one hand, give overview on an aggregated level and have the details where you need to have them. And scenario management, we will come back to that. As we will show, we believe good scenario capabilities is essential in driving a successful SiOP and executive SiOP. And volume to value, aggregation, disaggregation, scenario management, these are really, let's say, native capabilities of Arqiva as a tooling. So we're very happy that we are the channel partner into Europe. It's a privilege to work with this type of state-of-the-art system. This is basically comparable. It just shows in more detail for the different steps in the SiOP process what modules Arqiva has available. These are some of our customers. You see that we are a cross-sector player. We really have solved demand planning or executive SiOP in different types of sectors. We bring you that knowledge of different types of sectors. If you look at demand planning in food and CPG, promos will be much more important. If you go to discrete and high-tech, projects may be very important. If you go to chemical and process, collaborative with key customers might be important. Well, there's lessons to be learned from different sectors. We have that knowledge available, and we bring the best really of the different sectors to our customers. That's at least the ambition we have. And we recently launched 2 new activities. So we have launched a Solventure Academy, which has as an objective provide supply chain training. We see that there is a knowledge gap in many companies, and providing good training we believe is also essential or crucial in improving the supply chain performance of our customers. So if you want to know more about the Accelerator Days, which are open trainings, or the Boost Camps, which are in-company trainings, please visit our website, solventure.academy, to know more. We have also launched Solventure Live, which is leading indicator forecasting. Well, there we are developing models and solutions to do causal forecasting, so forecasting based on external and leading information. That includes macroeconomic leading indicators. It also includes promo information, weather information, events, social media, so all types of external information. We believe that's where the field of forecasting is going, forecasting based on external data. And if you want to know more, please visit the Leading Indicator Forecasting website. We also have separate webinars on that, so if you've been interested, please let us know. We're happy to keep you posted. So that was it for a short introduction. Key elements of Exec SiOP. Well, we believe that there's 2 crucial elements. On the one hand, it's about reporting. It's about the state of the business. Where are we today and where are we going? That's the one hand. The second hand is decision making. You need to make sure that your Exec SiOP is more than a reporting meeting. You need to be able to take key decisions while you have your management team around the table, and it needs to be facts-based, so that's where the interaction with the reporting comes from. crucial question here, and that's really the question where we see companies struggle the most with, is, yeah, but which KPIs, right? I've seen a lot of dashboards, but the crucial question is always, which type of KPIs do we need? Which are the supply chain metrics that matter? And to answer that question, we want to come back to work we've been doing over the last 2 years with companies, where we've used the concept of the supply chain triangle. And you see that the triangle has 3 corners. On the one hand, it has a service corner, it has a cost corner, and it has a cash corner. What service? We just mentioned a couple of service aspects. So for sure, a certain lead time reliability, and what's our on time in full, or the OTIF. But it's also like, what's the order flexibility? Do we have any MOQs, or can customers order at any time and in any type of quantity? Do we have consignment stocks? That's also a service aspect. How broad is our product portfolio? How broad is the assortment we are offering towards our customers? Do we allow customer-specific products? So all of these are service attributes. Cost, I think, speaks for itself. And then cash, in general, I believe that cash, inventory, or more in general working capital, has become more important in companies. And we see a struggle in that supply chain triangle. Just to give a couple of examples, for instance, I see that procurement says we will start sourcing in the Far East. That's good for the cost. Well, I hope that if you source in the Far East, that indeed your cost will go down. But at the same time, it will create more inventory because you have a longer lead time and you might have more quality issues. I also see that sales says, okay, we want to increase market share by extending the product portfolio. Well, again, I hope that increasing the product portfolio is perceived by the customer as an improved service. Improved service will help to push the top line and to increase market share. But again, well, increasing the product portfolio will also require more inventory, so it will require more cash. I also see that companies launch initiatives to reduce inventories or to control inventories, and they start with high hopes, and then around the middle of the year they see that the initiatives are not really delivering what they expected. So what do they then do? They resort to the handbrake. And what is the handbrake when it comes to stock management? It's lowering the safety stocks. If you lower the safety stocks, your inventory will go down, for sure. But it will also negatively impact service. And if you negatively impact service, you will have all kinds of firefighting costs, so it will also negatively impact your cost. So all of this just to mention that we really believe that companies struggle with the balance in that supply chain triangle, and that supply chain management is about a kind of a holistic optimization, the balancing of that triangle. How does it come that we struggle as companies? Well, if you look at how companies are organized and what are typical metrics that people, are having their targets, well, if I'm in sales or marketing, if I step into the car in the morning, my primary thoughts will probably be about the turnover, the top line, the market share. If I'm in purchasing, my primary objective and concern will probably still be about the purchasing cost. If I'm the CFO, I will more think about financial terms like earning per shares, what's the cash flow, what are the inventory turns. If we apply this type of traditional organization chart to the supply chain triangle, this is what we get. We see that in a lot of companies, the salespeople are primarily pulling the top side of the triangle, that operations is primarily pulling the cost side of the triangle, and that finance is pulling the cash side of the triangle. It's finance who is concerned about the cash, about the capital employed, but because finance does not really understand supply chain, they will look for a victim called the VP of supply chain to lower the inventories. And if as a VP of supply chain you need to lower the inventory, be aware that managing the inventory is really about managing the balance in the triangle. And I got the question before from companies like, is this not how companies are run? Won't there always be conflicting objectives between the different departments? And I believe that should not be the goal, or that should not be the case. And why is that? Well, if I'm an investor and I look at the company, I say, well, service is driving the top line. That's driving the turnover. But as an investor, I'm not, let us say, only concerned with top line. If I combine the top line and the cost, I get something like the EBIT. I get the profitability. I get the margin. As an investor, I'm not only concerned with the top line or with growth, I'm also concerned with the margin. So what do I earn? And I'm even not just concerned with the EBIT, with the margin you generate, because if I have two companies generating 100 million euro of EBIT, but the one requires 50 million of capital and the other requires 100 million of capital, then I'd rather do the first investment twice. So as an investor, I'm really concerned with what's the EBIT you generate over the invested capital, over the cash or over the capital employed. And that's the financial definition of the return on capital employed. It's the EBIT over the capital employed, and the capital employed is your working capital plus your fixed assets. So there's a good reason to balance that supply chain triangle. The reason is to optimize the shareholder value by optimizing the return on capital employed. If we try to, let's say, further reason along these lines, well, what would be the supply chain metrics that matter? If we agree that we need to balance the triangle, how can we be more specific about which type of KPIs we need? Well, if you look for specific KPIs, at least I once started with the SCORE model. I think the SCORE model, it's a reference model in supply chain, and that's where I started. So if you look at the SCORE model, they have so-called level 1 metrics. So you see here the level 1 metrics, and the level 1 metrics are, let's say, clustered in 3 groups when it comes to the service dimension. You have responsiveness, you have reliability, and you have agility. So responsiveness means with, okay, how quickly can I deliver? That's in fact the order lead time. Reliability is, how reliable am I on the promise? So that's typically the on time in full. And SCORE, I think, in the last 5 years, has added agility as a more service type of metric, where we say, well, maybe I'm not only responsive, I'm not only reliable, but I'm also agile. Like if all of a sudden you order 50 or 60% more, how quickly can I deliver that type of volume? Right? Or what's the flexibility or the adaptability that I have? So these are the metrics coming from the SCORE model. What I discovered over the last, let's say, 1.5 years, is that this set of metrics, if you look at the service dimension, is really incomplete. If you only measure this, you will miss essential stuff. And how did I discover? Well, I did quite some strategy trainings and strategy projects, both on business strategy and supply chain strategy, both with retail companies and with industrial companies, with manufacturing companies. And the strategy model I used is the one of Tracy and Wiersema. And Tracy and Wiersema did research, I think the book is from the 90s, so it's already quite some time. They did research on what drives success. If we analyze companies which have been outperforming their competitors over a prolonged period, so meaning over 10 to 15 years, this is what we call market leaders. What's the trick or what's the recipe of the market leaders? And Tracy and Wiersema discovered 2 things. They said, well, first, market leaders choose one of 3 options, and the options are shown over here: operational excellence, product leadership, customer intimacy. And 2, market leaders are extremely disciplined in executing that strategy. So it's the discipline of market leaders. That's the book that they make. Operational excellence means low cost. If you look at a company like Ryanair or Southwest in the US, they typically disrupted their market by playing on low cost. That's operational excellence. Product leadership means I always have the best, the newest, the highest specification product. So companies or customers buy from me because I simply have the best product. Customer intimacy means I have the best total solution. I'm not necessarily the cheapest, I'm not necessarily the first one with a new technology on the market, but I have the best understanding of my customer's problem, and I am the one who is able to give the best end-to-end solution. That's customer intimacy. Well, I work with companies on, okay, where are we as a business and how does that impact our supply chain? That's the work I did. And what I discovered is, if we look at the SCORE metrics, well, if I'm a product leader, I know that my product will be more complex. And why? Because I simply have the best, the highest specification. If that's the type of product I want to build, I might be working with niche suppliers. I may need more. I may need more components or more ingredients in my product, and all of this will lead to higher inventories, and this will probably also lead to a higher cost. So a product leader has a higher cost position, but if I look at the SCORE metrics, I don't see anything which allows me to say, well, you will be a product leader, and that will later translate in a higher cost and a higher cash. So I don't see that. If I look at the customer intimacy player, if I have the best total solution for my customer, I will most probably offer more products. Again, if I have more SKUs, well, for sure I will have higher inventories. And if I have more SKUs for the same volume compared to a cost player, probably my cost per unit will also be higher. If I deliver more products, it's also a type of service I will deliver to my customers. But again, I won't find this in the SCORE model. So my finding was that the SCORE model really contains holes. It does not allow you to specify the type of strategy you follow. We know that the strategy has an impact on the cost and the cash. So we should be able to model strategic trade-offs or choices in the service dimension. So to do that, we use the kind of intermediate model. That's the model of Prof and Matthews. And they say, if you analyze value propositions of companies, it's typically based on 5 dimensions: access, experience, price, product, service. What do we recognize here? Well, product, sometimes customers buy from me simply because I have the best product. Well, that ties into the product leadership. Sometimes customers buy with me simply because I have the best price. That links into operational excellence. I also see something like service. If I have more SKUs, that links into customer intimacy. It's a type of service I deliver. If I have more flexibility or more adaptability, that will again tie into customer intimacy. It's a type of service I deliver to my customers. Access means how easy is it for customers to do business with me? Am I present in different continents? What's my typical lead time? And experience is a bit difficult, I think, to translate to certain industries, but experience means if a customer buys from me, how does he experience either the buying transaction or either the product? So what we built, and we'll also compile it in a vision paper, and actually we're in the process of writing a book on that supply chain triangle, so more certainly to follow next year. What we did is we complemented here the service dimension by the product, the price. We expanded here the service. Flexibility, adaptability is certainly a service aspect, but the number of SKUs, the width of the product portfolio is certainly also a service aspect. And the experience, which, for instance, could be the satisfaction rate. So we are sure that if you want to model strategy, you need a richer definition of the service angle compared to what SCORE is delivering. And I will give more examples later on, so for now I'll just leave it with that, and I will continue the rest of the discussion. So if we redefine the service angle, well, we can use SCORE, but we certainly need to expand SCORE. And for me, modeling strategy is really on how do we drive value from the customer, what type of service do we want to deliver. So this is where strategy needs to tie in. So it's important that we have a range of service attributes and metrics which is broad enough to model the strategy. If we look at cost, you will see that I'm not a very big fan of SCORE. Also there, SCORE has two metrics, level 1 metrics, cost of goods sold, and something like supply chain management cost. Well, if you ask 10 people what is the supply chain management cost, it's not a common definition. So instead of using SCORE type of definitions for the cost, I prefer to use finance type of definitions for cost, like direct material, direct labor, indirect labor, tying into cost of goods sold, SG&A, selling, general and administrative. It's something which is not modeled in SCORE, but again, if I'm a customer intimacy player, if I really want to know my customer best, I may have a high sales cost because of that level of intimacy. So modeling SG&A is important if you want to model strategy. If you look at cash, you see that SCORE has cash-to-cash cycle time, so that's the CCC, the cash conversion cycle, which is a measurement of the working capital. Well, working capital is important on the cash side, but next to working capital, we are in favor of also mentioning the underlying components like days inventory on hand, days payables outstanding, and days sales outstanding. Not only working capital, if we look at the return on capital employed, we should also look at the fixed assets. Also, fixed assets can have an impact on the cost. If I do an investment, it may lower my cost per unit. For instance, automating certain production lines, it's shifting part of the cost towards the capital employed, towards a fixed asset. So we suggest to include the fixed assets. And yeah, again, not only the supply chain fixed assets, it's really the total assets in the company that count. And another thing which strikes me is that here, if you look at the SCORE model, we have return on supply chain fixed asset. This is a return metric, and we are certainly in favor of first measuring each of the sides of the triangle separately. So you need to have service metrics, you need to have cost metrics, you need to have cash metrics or capital employed metrics, and only then shift to combined metrics. That's what we showed here. So I know service is a driver for top line. If I combine top line and cost, I get something like the bottom line. That's a combined metric. If I look at the bottom line generated over the capital employed, then I get return types of metrics. So if you build a metrics dashboard, it's essential or crucial that you measure each of the individual sides of the triangle, and only then you look at the combined metrics. Top line, bottom line, return on capital employed. Something I do like from the SCORE model is that they work with so-called diagnostic metrics. Where do we put the forecast accuracy? Is it a service metric? Is it a cost metric? Is it a cash metric? Well, actually it's a kind of a diagnostic metric. I know that if I improve my forecast accuracy, it will improve my service, it will reduce my costs, and I will be able to lower my safety stock, so it will lower the inventory. In general, we believe that process metrics or diagnostic metrics really work on the different dimensions at the same time. So if you are building a dashboard, we believe you need process metrics, and you need to measure the different sides of the triangle, which results in a combination of metrics. So for us, that hopefully solves the question like, which KPIs do I need? Well, we believe that we start from the supply chain triangle because that's the struggle you have. You try to balance the triangle. So if you only measure service, you will be blind for any cost impact or any cash impact. If you only measure service and cost, you will be blind for the cash impact. So you really need to measure the three sides of the triangle, then derive, let's say, top line, bottom line, and the return metrics, and you need process metrics. This is an example of a dashboard we compiled for a customer. So what you see here is on the right hand side, you see the combined metrics, top line, bottom line, and return metrics. Here you see some of the service, you see the metrics on the three sides of the triangle, service related, cost related, and capital employed related, and here you see some in-process metrics. What's the story behind this company? Well, it's a product leader, meaning that if it's a product leader and you look at the service, well, we really want to know like what's the percentage of sales coming from new products. For a product leader, that's important. Also, if you look at the price point, if I'm a product leader, I want to have a premium price in the market. That's important. So I want to measure what is my price point compared to the average price in the market, and we see that we're 23% high. We see, if we look here, that we are at 1 billion, which is 41 million euros above the budget, and even 144 million higher than last year, so it's a 14% increase compared to last year, and we are 4% ahead of the budget. And we clearly also see that's coming from a booming new product. So the target for sales of new products is 25%. We are currently at 33%. So from that perspective, we are doing extremely well. We see that the price point is a bit below target. The target is 25% higher than the average. We are only at 23%, but 23% is still quite good. Maybe we had some bigger contracts for which we have to do some price reduction. So this side is looking very good. We see a lot of red over here. Because we are so successful, we see that we really have difficulties to supply in time. Our lead time is at 3 weeks, which is 1 week higher than the target. Our on time in full is only 90%, which is 5% below target. Not only we have difficulties to follow, we see that some suppliers have a big issue to follow. Right? Because the product is so successful, we have a key bottleneck at one of the suppliers. That supplier's performance is really dragging the whole supply chain down. You see it also negatively affects our OEE, so it negatively affects our efficiency, our cycle time, and so on. This has a negative effect on the cost of goods. You see that the direct material cost is higher than expected. Why is that? Well, probably we pay a premium for any product in the supplier market we can get our hands on. So we pay a premium for any product available on the supplier side. We also have a lot of expediting costs, a lot of rush orders because of the supply problems we experience, and that is driving up our direct material cost. That direct material cost is driving up the cost of goods sold, so that is negatively impacting the EBIT. So the EBIT is below target. Target was 8%, we're only at 7.53. It sounds negative, but again here we see that we are 2.49 higher than last year. So last year was only around 5%, so we increased with 2.5%, so it still remains a good story. Despite the fact that the EBIT is a bit lower, we see that the return on capital employed is green. We are 0.4% higher than budget. We are even 5% higher than last year. And how come that ROCE is still good? Well, you can see here that the cash conversion cycle is 23 days below the target of 150. And that really has to do with the fact that we worked on reducing inventories. We worked on decreasing the days of sales outstanding, and we worked on increasing the days of payables outstanding. So we did an excellent job here in reducing the working capital. So despite the fact that the EBIT is a bit below target, the good news is that we are quite ahead of schedule when it comes to working capital reduction, and that gives a very good result for the return on capital employed. So this is an example on how we build a dashboard for a product leader based on the ingredients we have shown on the previous slide. Nicola will show later in this webinar a short demo on how Archiva can be used to build this type of dashboards. So I'm a bit behind schedule, so I'm trying to make sure that we have sufficient time for both the demo and the questions. I hope I already answered a kind of a first question like reporting, which KPIs do I need? Also decision making, which type of criteria do I need? Well, always work on the 3 sides of the triangle and start from there to derive metrics and also to define supporting metrics. Decision making, well, we know which criteria to use. The second question is, how do I make effective decision? We are big believers in scenario-based analysis and scenario-based decision making. This is an example from a customer. So it's a real-life case, but of course the figures are fake. The figures have been transformed. But it's a company which was selling into Russia and which is selling, amongst others, products coming from Turkey. So you might remember that in the beginning of the year, all of a sudden Russia calls an embargo on Turkish products because Turkey had shut down a Russian MiG, still debated whether it was on Turkish soil or whether it was on Syrian soil. In any case, it posed a big challenge for that company because if you look at the sales forecast for, let's say, the next quarter, The figure is 40.4, and about 31% is coming from products produced in Turkey. So we have a big issue there, because if this embargo is really, let's say, executed, then you have a 30% risk on the top line in Russia. There's a second big risk, meaning that the goods in Russia are delivered from Belgium, from the DC in Belgium. And if you look at the DC in Belgium, well, they have ordered for the next quarter 11.2 million of material, of which around 27% is mentioned to go to Turkey. So the second problem is that if Russia is no longer taking Turkish products, there is around 3 million of product which we have ordered in Turkey and which is probably coming our way. So that's an example of a situation where we believe you need to run scenarios, you need to analyze the impact based on that supply chain triangle, and you need to come with a proposal and ask for a decision on the Executive SiOP meeting. So impact on the top line, you could run two scenarios, like no boycott, 100% boycott. Impact on Russia, when will we be sold out on which products? What will be the impact on the turnover? Because I might still have some inventory, so the effect is not immediate. It can take a couple of weeks before the effect is really visible. What is the impact on Belgium? So what will be the resulting stock build-up in Belgium? That's the first question. Second question, protecting the top line in Russia. So every company has its Pareto, so most probably with 20% of the products, I can easily offload 50 to 80% of the demand. So can I find substitutes, products not coming from Turkey, but with a comparable specification? So can I offload some of the demand to non-Turkey product ranges, either 50% or either 100%? Again, what's the impact on Russia? When do we need to switch? What's the impact on the turnover? Because the prices could be slightly different if I'm using different products. And what's the impact on Belgium? Like, okay, depending on where the new product is produced, I may have to do it with the buffer stocks I currently have in my DC in Belgium and potentially in the chain coming from the supplier. So what type of supply do I have available, and by how far can I support this type of scenario? That's the second type of question. Question number 3, so can I reduce the supply from Turkey? Well, it will depend on my supply contract. If it's my own factory, maybe I can just put a full stop on the production. If it's a supplier, there may be a certain limited flexibility upwards and downwards on the supply agreement over the next quarter. So again, I need to simulate what is the impact. And for the goods that I can't get rid of, I think around the same time, Iran was opening up to trade with the West. So if Iran is now opening up to trade with the West, would there be an opportunity to sell some of the unsold Turkish stuff into Iran? So all of these are scenarios that in a pre-S&OP type of either process or even meeting you would try to prepare, and you would support or you would suggest specific decisions to the Executive SiOP meeting. So for us, this is really the framework. On the one hand, you do reporting, you run scenarios. Nicola will not show really the scenario management, but if you would revisit our webinars on supply planning and on demand planning, you will see that scenario is really a native capability of Arqiva, and then you want to come to decision making. So running the Exec SiOP, it has been a quietly lengthy introduction. Well, for sure, it's a meeting for the executive committee. It needs to be chaired by the CEO or the business unit president. What's a template agenda? Well, you will end with action items and decisions made. So you will also start with reviewing the action items of the previous meetings. You start with maybe reviewing the overall business performance, then doing a segment by segment review and try to propose and come to decisions. So show segment details. Nicola will also show how this can easily be done in Arqiva. Talk about product lifecycle management or the product management. Talk about specific scenarios and contingency plans for specific segments and suggest decisions for approval. So reporting is important, but again, make sure that it's not only a reporting meeting, that you come to decisions, that you propose decisions for approval, and that you do that based on scenarios. Okay, so that was it. I assume a lot of material to digest. We will certainly also send the slides towards you. But before we close, we're happy to take questions. So if anybody of you has a question, we're most happy to try to answer them. So feel free to post. So the presentation here shows how you can post a question. So if you just go to the questions tab, you can type here a question. If you push send, then we will see it here on our screen, and Katrin will hand me the question. So any questions, most welcome. Okay, I have a first question here. I think the question here is, how does the Archiva reporting compare to other reporting tools? Well, I think on the one hand, why we see people or our customers are using the reporting because it's integrated. Of course, if they're doing the forecasting, the supply planning into Archiva, it's all tied into one tool. So you really kind of have a live view on the latest data. That's certainly one of the reasons why our customers are using it. I think in general, well, there's really a lot of reporting tools out there. I think the Archiva reporting capability is state of the art. There's no things we cannot do. But I reckon, or I align with what has been said, like for us, it's also, or the biggest added value that certainly we as Solventure try to bring is also help you to develop that story and to define which type of KPIs do I need and how do the different KPIs tie together and how do they link into one story. Some other questions popping up. A question here, how long does the Executive S&OP meeting last? I've seen big differences. Some companies take 3 hours, some companies take 1 hour. My experience has certainly been that a good preparation where information has been made available upfront should allow you to say do it in 1 hour or 1 hour and a half maximum. And that's probably also the attention span that most people can kind of keep up with. So shorter meetings, if they are well prepared, in general, are also better meetings. Yeah, another good question, like it seems that the reporting capability or building the dashboard in Archiva is heavily depending on having the data available in Archiva. That's true. Like if the data is not available in Archiva, we are not able to show it. At the same time, getting data into Archiva is quite straightforward. So if you already have a BI system, or if you would be using SAP, we also have an SAP connector. So it's true, if it's not in there, we can't report on it, but at the same time, getting the data in general is not the biggest struggle. And do you have an example where Archiva links to a dedicated dashboard like ClickView? Well, again, we do have customers which are using different reporting tools. I think for us the crucial question always does remain like, which type of KPI do we need, and in which type of story does it link into? And maybe a last question before we close, like, So if your strategy changes, is it easy to change the dashboard? Yes, I think Nicolas has shown that building the dashboard goes quite quickly, so that's not necessarily the biggest struggle. I also do agree that if your strategy changes, you should change your dashboard. I've seen examples where companies say, well, we can no longer compete on cost because of low-cost imports coming from the Middle East or coming from Asia. But if you can no longer compete on cost, and you say, I want to drive more value from my existing customer relations, then you are going for customer intimacy. So I see that customers will start introducing more complementary products to their existing products. But you really need to think that through and think about, I need to report on the number of SKUs. I need, for instance, to report on the share of wallet of my customer. So which type of KPIs do I need in my dashboard to reflect my new strategic goals and my new strategy situation? I see some other questions still popping up, so time is up, so we'll close down here, but don't hesitate if you still have a question, feel free to pop it up. We'll send out the questions and the answers, let us say by tomorrow the latest. Let me thank you for maybe the different webinars you have followed this year. We have a busy webinar schedule planned for next year, so we want to do at least one a month, and probably do some more. It's been exciting for us to share all of this knowledge with you. We hope you enjoyed it. We will be sending the presentations. Check out our SlideShare page for both the recordings and the presentations, and keep the feedback coming. So if you have any feedback whatsoever on how to improve this type of webinars, we are most open to it. So let me thank you and wish you the best for the year end, and hope to see you back next year.